Level 1. The applicant. You're sitting in your apartment on a Sunday night. You have $412 in your checking account and a degree in criminal justice that hasn't opened a single door. You've applied to 26 jobs in the last 3 months. Local police departments, an insurance fraud investigator role, a private security firm that promised to call and didn't. You're 24 years old, and you have the quiet feeling that your real life is supposed to be bigger than this, and that it hasn't started yet. Then you find it, a posting on a government website, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The description is short and serious. Conduct investigations, protect the United States from terrorism and foreign threats, uphold the Constitution of the United States. There's a starting pay grade listed, GL10, and one line about a mandatory training academy in Virginia. There's a button that says, Begin Application. You click it. The application wants everything. Every address you've lived at since you were 18. Every job you've ever held. Every person who can vouch for you. Have you ever used illegal drugs? Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever sold or smoked anything you shouldn't have? Do you have debt? Do you gamble? Do you have family or close contacts living overseas? You fill out a form called the SF-86, and it's the most honest you've ever been with anyone, including yourself. You hit submit. You close the laptop. You wait. Then the process starts, and it does not stop. A written test in a testing center with strangers. A Phase 2 assessment where they watch how you think under a clock. A physical fitness test where you do timed push-ups and sit-ups and a 1.5-mile run while an examiner writes down numbers. A medical screening. A polygraph, where you sit in a chair with sensors on your chest and your fingers while a quiet examiner asks if you've ever betrayed your country, and your mouth goes dry even though you've done nothing wrong. Then the background investigation. For the next several months, agents you never see are knocking on the doors of people you barely remember. Your college roommate, the neighbor you waved at, an ex who hasn't heard your name in years. They're building a picture of you that's more complete than the one you have of yourself. Then one afternoon, your phone rings. A blocked number. A calm voice tells you that you've been selected and that you'll report to the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. You tell your family you got a job with the government. You don't fully understand what you just agreed to. Your old life ended the moment you clicked that button. You just don't know it yet. Level 2, the trainee. They send you to Quantico, 500 acres of forest and brick buildings and shooting ranges on a Marine Corps base, surrounded by fences. For the next 20 weeks, this is your entire world. You share a dorm room. You can't leave when you want. Your phone matters less every day. You wake before dawn and run. You eat fast and sit in classrooms studying constitutional law and rules of evidence and the 4 ways an investigation can fall apart in court. You learn that the most dramatic part of the job is paperwork and that a case is only as strong as the reports you write at midnight while your hands still ache. You learn to shoot. Hundreds of rounds a week until the weapon stops feeling like a foreign object and starts feeling like a tool. You learn defensive tactics, how to take a resisting man to the ground without breaking him or yourself. You learn to handcuff, to clear a room, to move through a doorway that could be hiding anyone. Then they take you to a place called Hogan's Alley, a fake town built just for you. A bank, a motel, a pool hall, a barber shop. Actors play criminals and witnesses and innocent people. You're handed a tip, and you have to follow it all the way to an arrest, and they're grading every choice you make. You forget to read someone their rights. You lose the case. You point your weapon at the wrong silhouette that stays with you. 850 hours of this. Not everyone makes it. Some can't pass the fitness test. Some freeze in the scenarios. Some discover that they don't actually want to point a gun at another human being, and they're honest enough to leave. The ones who make it aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who can carry pressure without showing it. who can do something hard at 2 in the afternoon. And sit down to dinner at 6 like it was a normal day. On graduation day, the director's representative calls your name. You walk across a stage. You raise your right hand and swear an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They hand you a badge and a credential and a gun. You are now a special agent of the FBI. Then they hand you an envelope with your first office assignment, and it's a city you've never been to and didn't request. Level 3, the rookie. You arrive in a field office in a city that isn't home. One of 56 across the country. You're a first office agent, the lowest rung, and everyone can tell. They put you on a squad. Maybe it's violent crime, maybe it's drugs, maybe it's white-collar fraud or counterintelligence. You don't get to pick. A senior agent who's seen 100 rookies gets handed your career and a sigh. Your starting salary works out to around $85,000 once they add locality pay and the 25% availability pay you get for being on call every hour of every day. It sounds like a lot until you divide it by the hours you actually work. Then it's just a number that keeps the lights on. The reality is nothing like the movies. You spend long days in a government sedan on surveillance, watching a door that never opens, drinking gas station coffee, learning that boredom is most of the job. You write reports. You serve subpoenas. You sit in interview rooms and learn that the most powerful thing you own isn't your weapon. It's your patience and your ability to make a frightened person believe you're the only one who can help them. Your first real case is small, and it eats a year of your life. A string of bank robberies. A fraud that drained the retirement savings of people who can't get it back. You knock on doors. You pull footage frame by frame. You build a timeline on a whiteboard and stare at it until the names stop being names and become a pattern. There's no music when it breaks. Just a tired man in a doorway and a stack of forms waiting for you back at the office. You make your first arrest. Your hands are steadier than you expected. You read a man his rights in a parking lot at 6 in the morning while his kids watch from a window, and something in you registers their faces and files them away in a drawer you'll try not to open again. You learn the rules of the system. Probable cause. Chain of custody. The wall between what you know and what you can prove. You learn that the Bureau cares about process the way a church cares about scripture, because process is the only thing that survives a defense attorney. You learn that everything you do has to look clean on paper, because one day a jury and a journalist and an inspector general will all read it. You're good at it. They notice. They start handing you the cases nobody else wants. Level 4, the undercover. A supervisor pulls you aside. They've watched how you talk to people, how you can become whoever the room needs you to be. They ask if you'd consider undercover work. You go through a separate school for it, in a place they don't advertise. They teach you to build a legend, a false name, a false history, a false life with a job and an apartment, and a phone that belongs to a person who doesn't exist. You learn to hold the lie under pressure, to answer questions about a past you invented as if you lived it, to never break character even when you're terrified. Then they put you inside something. A trafficking network. A fraud ring. A group that would kill you if they knew your real name. You buy what they're selling. You earn their trust slowly, over months. Because trust earned fast is trust they don't believe. You go to dinners and birthdays, and you laugh at the jokes of men you are quietly building a case to destroy. You shake hands and mean none of it. The friendships are fake. The evidence is real. Everything else is theater. You can't tell your family where you are. You can't call your mother on her birthday from a phone that belongs to your cover. You celebrate holidays alone in an apartment that feels temporary because everything in your life is temporary now. Some nights, you forget which version of yourself you are. The one with your real name, or the one they think they know. That's when you realize you're good at this. And that's when you realize it's costing you something you might not get back. One night a man you've been drinking with for 6 months looks at you a beat too long and asks a question that isn't on the script, your heart stops. You answer the way your false self would answer, easy and bored, and you watch his eyes for the flicker that means you're already dead. It doesn't come. The moment passes. You go home and sit in the dark, and understand exactly how thin the line is between you and a shallow grave nobody would ever find. You make the case. The arrests come down in a single coordinated morning. It's the best work you've ever done. You can't tell a single person you love that you did it. Level 5, the case agent. They bring you back into the daylight and give you something bigger. You're the case agent now, the one whose name is on the file, the one who answers for everything. It's a major investigation, an organized crew, or a cartel pipeline, or a public official who's been selling his office. The kind of case that takes years and could collapse on a single mistake. You build it brick by brick. Subpoenas for bank records. Court-approved wiretaps that put you in a room with headphones for 16 hours a day, listening to other people's lives, surveillance teams, analysts buried in spreadsheets. You hear things on those wiretaps you can't unhear. A man planning a betrayal. A wife who has no idea what her husband is. Children in the background asking when dinner is. You write all of it down because it's evidence, and you tell yourself you're one of the good ones. And most days, you believe it. And then there's the part nobody tells you about. The confidential human sources, the informants. You find people on the inside, people with access. You learn what they want and what they're afraid of. One of them is in over his head and terrified, with a family who needs him. You sit across from him and you offer him a way out, and you both know the way out is a leash. He signs on because the alternative is worse. You run him for 2 years. You meet him in parking garages and diners on the edge of town. You protect him because his life is now in your hands. And you also use him because his information is the whole case. Some nights you can't tell the difference between protecting a man and using him, and you stop asking yourself the question because you don't like the answer. The case ends in a courtroom. The verdict comes back guilty. People go to prison who deserve it. The system worked. Your source disappears into a new life with a new name, and you never hear from him again. You tell yourself you saved him. You hope it's true. Then they hand you the next file. Level 6, the operator. You've kept your tactical certifications current, and the field office SWAT team needs bodies who can shoot and stay calm. You volunteer. It's a collateral duty on top of everything else, which means more training, more early mornings, more time away from a home that's already half a stranger to you. You learn to stack on a door, to breach, to move through a house in the dark with men whose lives depend on you doing exactly the right thing at exactly the right second. You train until it's muscle memory, because in the moment that matters, there's no time to think. Most of the work is arrests of dangerous people, a barricaded suspect, a fugitive who swore he'd never go back, a house where the intelligence says there are weapons and a hostage and very little margin for error. You hit a target at 4 a.m. It goes wrong the way these things go wrong, fast and loud and out of order. There's gunfire in a hallway. Someone you've trained beside for years goes down next to you. You do everything right, and it isn't enough. The suspect is in custody. The hostage is alive. The mission, on paper, is a success. You drive home as the sun comes up. You don't sleep. A few days later, you stand at a funeral in a dress uniform with a folded flag and a family that will never know exactly what happened, because you can't tell them all of it. You go back to work the following week. You flinch at loud noises now. You sit a little closer to the exits. You don't explain. Level 7, the supervisor. After enough years and enough closed cases, they offer you a promotion. Supervisory special agent. You go from running investigations to running people, a squad of agents whose careers, and sometimes whose lives, are now your responsibility. You take the desk. You trade the street for a glass-walled office and a calendar full of meetings. You sign off on operations instead of running them. You approve the surveillance. You authorize the arrest. You take the call at 3 in the morning when one of your young agents has a situation going sideways and needs you to think clearly while they can't. Every decision is a calculation. Push too hard and someone gets hurt. Pull back too far and a dangerous person stays free. There's no clean answer, only the answer you can defend later. You learn that leadership is mostly absorbing fear, so the people under you don't have to feel it. You take the bad news first and hand down the calm. You eat the blame and pass along the credit. It works. It also empties you out a little more each year, and nobody notices. Because looking steady is the entire job. You're good at it. Which means they give you more of it. More squads, more budgets, more politics. You spend your days managing the careers of others and your nights managing the fallout. Somewhere in here, your marriage ends. It didn't end in a fight. It ended in 1,000 missed dinners and canceled vacations and conversations you couldn't have because the work was classified or the work was just always there. Your kids are getting older, and they know you as the parent who was always somewhere they couldn't picture. Your desk every morning, and the buck stops with you. You barely investigate anymore. You manage and you politic and you protect your people from the machine above and the machine below. You meet with the local police chief and the U.S. attorney and the mayor, who all want something from the FBI and don't always want the same thing. When something goes well, it's classified, and no one outside the building will ever know your office did it. When something goes wrong, it's on the front page, and your name might not be in the story, but your fingerprints are all over the decision. You attend more funerals than weddings now, and you've stopped keeping count of either. You've gotten good at the dress uniform, and the folded flag, and the words you say to families who will only ever know the cover story version of how their son or daughter died. You stand in front of cameras and say carefully true things that leave out the parts you can't say. You learn that at this level, the job is partly theater, and that the theater protects the real work happening in rooms with no windows. You sleep 5 hours a night. You eat at your desk. You see your kids on holidays, and they're polite to you, like guests. You have power now. Real power. The kind your 24-year-old self couldn't have imagined. And you'd trade a piece of it to go back to a parking lot at 6 in the morning when the job was simple and your hands were steady and you still believed you'd be home for dinner. Level 9, the executive. They call you back to Washington, to headquarters, the building you first walked into as a nervous trainee, except now you walk past the wall of honor in the lobby, where the names of agents who died in the line of duty are carved into stone. You knew some of them. A few of them died on operations you were part of. You stop in front of it more often than you'll admit. You're an assistant director now. You run an entire division. You set policy for thousands of agents you'll never meet. You manage a budget with numbers in it that don't appear in any public document. You brief the director. Sometimes you brief people whose offices you only ever saw on television. You testify before congressional committees in open hearings where you say what can be said, and the real conversations happen afterward, in closed rooms with no transcripts, where senators ask the questions they don't want on the record, and you give them answers that are true and carefully incomplete. Everyone plays their part. Everyone wants to be able to say they didn't know the details. You give them that. You sign off on operations that live in the gray areas, the ones that look darker the closer you examine them, the ones where the law and the mission don't quite line up and someone has to decide anyway that someone is you now. You learn that real power is quiet, and that the quietest rooms hold the heaviest decisions. You are the system. You used to be a kid scrolling a website at midnight. Now you're the machine that kid will one day apply to join. You realize you can no longer remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to. Level 10, the ghost. You put in your papers after 24 years. You didn't entirely choose the timing. The Bureau has a mandatory retirement age, and the clock that's been running since the day you swore your oath finally ran out. There's a ceremony in a conference room. 50 people. A speech about service and sacrifice. They give you a plaque and a flag and a firm handshake, and then it's over, and you walk out of the building one last time, and the badge that was your whole identity goes into a drawer. You move to a quiet house. The pension is good. The health care is covered. The government takes care of its own, at least financially. But no one takes care of the memories. You don't have many friends left. The people you served with are scattered, or retired, or gone. The people you knew before the Bureau became strangers somewhere around year 3. You can't explain the gaps in your story. You can't explain the scar or the funerals you attended, or why you still sit facing the door in every restaurant, or why you check the locks twice and then a third time, or why you wake at 3 in the morning and walk the perimeter of your own house looking for a threat that isn't there. You think about the informant you ran for 2 years and used to win a case. The teammate who went down in a hallway beside you. The kids in a window watching you arrest their father at dawn, 20 years ago, whose faces never actually left that drawer. The decisions you made at 35 that you can still feel at 55. You served your country in ways most people will never see, and some of them might not approve of. You kept people safe who will never know your name, and the only proof any of it happened is a folded flag, a plaque you can show no one the real story behind, and a name you hope is never carved into that wall in Washington. You carry it alone. You'll carry it until you die, and somewhere, right now, on a Sunday night, a 24-year-old is sitting in an apartment with a degree that hasn't opened any doors, and $400 in the bank, and the restless feeling that their real life is supposed to be bigger than this. They're scrolling a government website. They're reading about special agents and protecting the country and serving in ways that matter. They're imagining the badge and the gun and the importance of it all. They're not imagining the funerals. They're not imagining the marriage that quietly ends. They're not imagining the 3 a.m. silence of a quiet house where a retired agent walks the perimeter, looking for ghosts. They find the button. They click apply. They have no idea what they just started. They'll learn. They always do. The cycle begins again.